What's up, everyone? My name is Ross, and welcome back to another episode of The Watch Engineer. Today, we're going to be taking a look at this. It is a vintage Evilard wristwatch. It's a manual wind, and it's actually the first watch I ever took apart, cleaned, serviced, and repaired. It was not running prior to me taking it apart, and now it is, and it's actually running pretty well. I thought I was done with everything. I replaced the crystal. Like I said, took it apart, serviced it, oiled it. And then I noticed that there was something wrong with the crown. I could wind it to set the hands if I turned it up, like away from me. See? Turning it away from me, no problem. But if I turned it towards me to set the time, well, the crown just unscrewed and came off. So I thought I had completely fixed this watch, addressed all the problems, but hey, sometimes you don't realize that there's still an outstanding issue until you actually start wearing it around. So it's not that big of an issue, and that's why this video isn't that long, because I'm just going to quickly show you how to fix a problem like this. It's like I said, not that big of a deal, but it is annoying if you're trying to set the time, and you don't want to wind, the hands all the way around when you could just, wind them backwards. So what we're going to use to fix it is Loctite 222. Loctite 222 is a very mild, I guess, Loctite. If you've ever used Loctite before, you've probably used it in applications where you never want that bolt or screw to move again. You want it to be a permanent setting. You apply it to the threads of whatever you're bolting down or screwing down, and that thing's not going anywhere. But we don't want that to be the case with this necessarily. We want it to be strong enough that the crown won't come undone from normal use. But if there's ever an issue with the crown or the stem, and we want to replace one but not the other, then we want to be able to get the crown off of the stem. So this Loctite number 222 will do just that. It'll harden just enough that the crown will not come loose through daily, normal wear. But if we ever want to replace it, we can use a pin vise and, break that seal that it creates. So we're just starting by taking off the case back. And the threads were a little damaged on this case back, which is why it's a little tricky to get off, but it still works. You just have to get it seated just right. And there's the movement. It's a nice 17 joule movement, Swiss made. And you can see, well, you can't really see from this camera angle, but the lettering there on the train wheel bridge says Evilard Watch Company. And I actually haven't seen very many Evilard watches, vintage Evilard watches for sale on eBay. I've been looking a good bit lately, looking for project watches, but I think this is the only Evilard I've actually seen. And we're just taking the crown out. So you saw at the beginning of the video, it's really easy to get it off. It's, unscrewing. And we're just going to use a piece of watchmaker's paper for our work surface. And here's the Loctite I was talking about. You can see 222, thread locker, purple. I've never used this type before, so I'm not sure how it reacts coming out of the tube, but I guess we'll see. All right, let's unscrew the crown. And those are the threads right where the crown attaches that we're going to apply the Loctite. get the movement in the frame there. All right, let's put a little on this watch. Whoa! Okay. All right, it is not as viscous as I thought it was going to be. So that's probably enough Loctite for like 200 crown repairs. You don't need to put even remotely that amount down, because we're just gonna barely dip the end of this in there. Oh well, I mean, so now we know. Now we know you got to be a little bit more careful when you are squeezing out the Loctite. All right, I'm just gonna use my finger. It's a little easier. So we just dip the threads that go into the crown in the Loctite. See, you got some nice adhesion. Maybe a little bit too much. I'm just gonna dab a little bit off, and I drop the crown. All right. Let's see if we can get this back in. This would be easier with a pin vise. I mean, you don't need to tighten it down. A pin vise is really only necessary when you're trying to unscrew a crown that is firmly attached. But it would make doing this a little bit easier because, as you can see, it's a little tricky holding the stem with your fingers and trying to tighten it with the other ones, especially with these finger cots on. But that's it. There we go. Crown reinstalled. You can get this out of the way. Whoa, that really seeped through there. Just crumple up this paper and maybe wipe that up a little bit. Yeah. Clean up my workstation. So we're going to put this back in the watch, and then we're going to let it sit overnight, because you want to give the Loctite time to dry before you start twisting the crown again. If I just went and started twisting it right now, it would just come loose again. You got to give that Loctite time to dry. So we put the crown back in, and we're just tightening this screw that locks the crown in place. There we go. Still ticking away nicely. All right, now let's give it a little test. Yep, popped out. It's going in. That's a little tricky without the movement ring to hold the movement in place. I'm just gonna use my finger. There we go. There, I'm just gonna give it a few twists to make sure it's tight. And reassemble the watch. Just trying to get this movement ring lined up. There we go. And get the case back on. Like I said, the threads are a little damaged, so it does take a bit of time to get it lined up so it'll screw on correctly. I'm jumping ahead here to spare you watching me mess with that case back for a while, but I did get it screwed on again, and here we are. So the freshly applied Loctite, we're just going to give this a few turns in the tightening direction just to make sure that it's as tight as we can get it. And we're going to let that sit overnight. It's been overnight. Here's the next day. We've got the watch band back on. It still winds. That's good. Yep. All right, moment of truth. Let's first test. Okay, that's the way it was working before. But now, yes, we can set the time in both directions. The Loctite worked. Let's see, it's 2:17. Oh, it was pretty close, only like 2 hours off. So let's go, 2:17. Boom. All right, perfect. So definitely one of the easier fixes in watchmaking, but hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you next time.